guys, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, I do reviews and reactions to TV shows, things on the news, things like that. Right now, I just finished the episode of Married at First Sight. Tonight's episode, it is April 7th, and there is 3 weeks until decision day. I have my laptop down here, so if you see me glancing down, I'm trying to go in chronological order. This episode wasn't as poppin' and exciting as past episodes, but obviously I feel like every show, every season of something, towards the end, it starts to get a little bit boring. But obviously it's a series, it's marriage. Is it series? Serious, it's marriage, so it's not going to be always glitz and glams and entertaining. But so I do again have my notes. I'm going to go through it, and if things kind of seem boring, I might gloss over it a little bit, but I still took notes on the entirety of the 2-hour episodes, also while they're 2 hours. But let's hop into it. We have a short glimpse of everyone's couples, like usual, because at the very beginning kind of glimpses to everybody, like in the morning, maybe their little conversations, and eventually zeroing in on Virginia and Eric at first. We also saw a little glimpse of Paige and Chris solo, and it irritated my soul because I'm over that man. Like, they broke up last week or the week before or the first episode, because he was never really into her. I'm not putting that shade to her, but like, he's just, Chris he just hurts me internally as if I was in the marriage. But Virginia's family, her sister and nephew, come to visit, and her sister mentioned that she has not seen Virginia since the wedding, which is wild to me because it's been months, but also they have their own lives, and also they're in this little marriage thing. I also don't know how quarantine or COVID is with this, so like maybe that also kind of prevents people from seeing their loved ones outside of this, to be safe in the bubble and not essentially get positive, because they were filming and producers' lives are at risk if that kind of happens. But Virginia is vocal about the problems that they've had in regards to like their living situations. If you recall, Virginia wants to stay in her apartment as long as possible, but Eric wants to get a house eventually with Virginia, which makes sense because they are married, they are a couple, but she kind of wants to hold on to her independent self and her just being Virginia, not Virginia and Eric. Although again, they're married, so it's like there's that compromise that she needs to get over, but it seems like there's still some ways until, I guess, overcoming that. Virginia sent Eric and her nephews out with the dog to try and like allow her to have time with her sister, just to actually vent, because obviously she was not going to get into that much with him being there. When he eventually walks out, she was saying how he's controlling and his views are just a little bit too much compared to her lifestyle. She likes to go out and drink and spend night with guy friends, and he wants her to be home and be I don't want to say he wants to be her housewife. In my head, I hear housewife, but he wants her to just be at home and essentially maybe not have guy friends, because again, she's very outgoing and possibly flirty. He doesn't use that word, but I feel like that's what he's worried about. But it's like, there are different stages in their lives. It does not mean that they can't be together, but there are different stages in their lives, and that's kind of what comes down to. She's a lot younger than him, and he wants to settle down and have kids, and she still wants to drink Thursday through Sunday, as she mentioned weeks ago. Next, we see Brianna plus Vincent discussing finances and budgeting, which is crucial for any couple, because finances is a big reason why people get divorced. So it's like maybe someone's stealing from their money, or this person has a lot more money than the other significant other, and it kind of just hurts their self-esteem. I've seen people tweet that Vincent isn't probably used to having a woman who's a stronger and more financially independent dynamic. Normally the man is the breadwinner of a marriage, so I guess when you have a woman who's making more money, it kind of helps your self-esteem as a man kind of perspective. So she's budgeting things out, and she's saying, I spend this much hundreds on personal care on this. I saw a little budget for Cookie, her dog. So it's like she was essentially the one who was racking it up in the sense of it. And at the end, he was just like, and I don't think she budgets, which is fine, because if you have the money like that, you got the money like that, you don't need to budget. But like, he was just kind of like almost having like a brain explosion. I don't know the right word to use when she was talking about like, oh, I spend this much money. He's like, oh, well, I think that's pretty ridiculous. Like the budget, like that's even almost extraneous. I don't think we need to do these things all the time. And things, he means like dates. And she's like, I want you to court me. I want it to feel like we're dating. I don't want it to like, oh, because we're married, that things are boring now. And I get that, because that's kind of what maybe also makes marriages fail, because men or the woman feel like they don't have to chase anymore. And that's kind of when things get boring, I guess. So I'm not gonna say money has a thing to do with that, but yes, you do need money to be able to take someone out. And he's been so glitzy and glammy about like trying to like win her over now. Imagine that just all stops because it just seems like he's not interested anymore. So I do see her perspective from that, but again, their money situations are different. He just started a business, and she's an engineer, if I remember correctly, so she's making a lot of money, and she wants to be able to spend that without feeling like she has to compromise. We are now 18 days until decision day, and everyone is individually meeting with experts without their partner. Virginia is the first person to talk to Pastor Cal, and he asked her about the best things about their marriage, And she was able to like list a good amount of things before she eventually started to ask her and answered questions. She mentioned that kid is like a big deal for her and him in a different perspective. Like he wants kids. Again, he's older than her, so I feel like he thinks that it's like now is when he needs it. Whereas she says that she doesn't know she wants to have kids. She has a fear of being pregnant and also has a fear of being a bad mom, which is valid. Like you just don't know, and you don't know until you have a kid whether you're going to be a good parent or, I don't want to say good because there are bad parents out there. And also she says that she comes from a split divorced family, so I feel like there's also that kind of stuff internalized as well. Like, can I be a good mother if like my parents were split and I don't even know what that looks like? When Eric spoke to Dr. Pepper, he was able to go on and on about how much he loves her, but then he told his side of the story about the arguments. He still had rants about, I think Rocky is the name. Rocky is Virginia's dog. The last episode he was venting about the dog and how it doesn't respect him and how the dog has bad manners. I was like, you're a grown adult married and you're using the dog as a pinpoint of, okay, let's just keep moving forward. So he had that to go on. I was like, let's just move on. And even the doctor said so as well too. He also mentioned how he wanted to have an independent wife, but Virginia's too independent. I said, oh, at least he's honest. But like, oh God. I was like, okay, she's too independent. But I knew this was a problem due to their differing lifestyles. Like he says he works, comes home, works, sleeps, whatever, just working. And she's like, I want to drink, I want to go out, I want to go Coachella, I want to do this. Oh my God, Vegas is my first time, let's take shots. Like there are different stages. Again, it doesn't mean that there's not a way for the marriage to work, but I knew that from this jump. And he's just saying that now, and like, yeah, like she's too independent for me. When they finally saw each other after their independent sessions, they were pretty weird about discussing their conversations. Like they weren't like, it went well, or I learned this. It was just like, yeah, it was a all right day. I was like, okay, you're kind of already reluctant to talk about it, but like, that's just what it is. You're gonna see it on TV anyways. And then he mentioned his issue with her drinking. So he also mentioned that with the doctor, or I think it was Cal he spoke with, but he's saying that she kind of drinks a lot, which I think she does, but again, the TV or producers can make it seem like someone does something or portrays it in a bad light, but it's just editing, so I don't know. Based off of editing, I would assume she has a drinking problem, maybe she doesn't. And he mentioned it, and she's like, well, regardless, the issues that we have, they would be existent with or without drinking, so don't pinpoint that on me. I'm like, sorry, sis. And then she brought up her standpoint with the whole children thing, like she had already mentioned on her own individual session. And it was such a strained conversation. Like, I just feel like they have so many issues to overcome in order to continue being married and not having issues. And I know you have, not saying you have to have issues, but relationships have issues, whether you're good or bad, but they're just like a little much. And it just seems like they've been married and they've just been fighting, and it's like they just met each other. So for them to act the way that they do is just very, to me. Next, we see Ryan talking with Dr. Pepper, and he immediately started with a lie. He said that the experts did an amazing 10 out of 10 job. He's lying. You know that the man is always making faces when she's talking, or he barely has anything to say. It's silent, it's awkward, there's not much to say to fill like the silence in the room. They haven't had sex. It's just very weird. And he also mentioned that he's not pressuring her into doing things that she doesn't want to, in the sense of like religion, because he wants religion in his future child's life whenever he has children. And I'm like, are you self-reflecting that she's not pressuring you because she's, or like you're not pressuring her because she's pressuring you because the whole sex thing, because she really wants that, and he's just like, I'm not ready, I need trust, this is not there yet. I'm like, okay. But then when Dr. Pepper asked him about sex and why they haven't done it yet, he was saying how he doesn't know how she feels about the lack of intercourse. And I'm like, that is a damn lie, because you know she asks you about it every time. She probably asked him about it a lot more than what we see on camera. So imagine he claims that he doesn't know anything. You don't know? I don't buy it. But he's gonna go talk about it later, so we'll get to that point. Clara met up with Pastor Cal, and she gave their marriage a 10 out of 10 as well too. So they both lying. They must have exchanged notes before going to their session, because how are you guys gonna both say 10 out of 10? No marriage, well, first off, is 10 out of 10 too. Theirs, if anyone, is definitely not 10 out of 10. They still have a lot of things to overcome. When he was talking about something at that donut episode, like when he took her out to get donuts, she was like, oh, I didn't know I was having a therapy session. He was like venting and talking, like she couldn't really listen to him. There's obviously just disconnects with them, so they both didn't need to say a 10 out of 10, and it was weird. I guess I was surprised that they gave the same score. And then she also mentioned how she feels like she's in love or loves him, but like she doesn't think he's there yet, and also that kind of, it's hard for her to even try to express it because he hasn't even told anyone I love you, so he obviously has some time to go until he can do that. So like, she feels vulnerable / scared to even say to him because like he's obviously not there yet, or what we think. We see Ryan and Clara debrief, and the first topic they covered was religion. The issue wasn't resolved at all because he was like, I want to end their lives if I have kids, and she's like, we'll discuss it when it gets there. And I'm like, I don't think that's like I can discuss it when it get there. You have to talk about that now, because imagine you have kids and then you're like, okay, let's talk about it now, and it's like he wants and she doesn't, and like the kid's already there. Like you need to have these discussions ahead of time and resolve it before you bring a kid up and then there's issues, especially around that. And then Ryan's confessional, he's like, yeah, like that's not the best answer I was expecting. I was expecting us to have like maybe a more resolved situation, but they did not. But then he was like, so the doctor told me to talk to you about sex and stuff. Like, how do you feel about that? And she's like, well, I'm frustrated, like sexually frustrated, but like, do you have a time frame? And he was like, I don't know. Like on one hand, yes, you can't just be like, on Saturday at 8 p.m. we're going to be like, also if you say I don't know, it almost just makes it feel like a no. Because she almost said like her asking so much about it, it's like pushing him away, and he admitted it. He's like, yeah, that's true. So I'm like, okay, let's just wrap up their situation, put it in a box and throw it somewhere, because I'm just not interested in this. Next, we see Paige meet with Dr. Pepper, and the doctor said she was sorry for Paige's situation. The experts thought that Paige and Chris would be great together. She had no idea, or they had no idea, that he'd be such a mess and that their relationship would turn into what it is. And she was also very adamant about talking trash on Chris and calling him a narcissist. Paige went on about the things that we already like know. We've seen it play out, so I didn't really have to listen too much. But then she said on decision day she needed to ask him questions. I said, questions about what? We know about Chris. Okay, we don't know about Chris. We know that Chris is trash, but we don't need to know more about him. There's not more questions that need to be resolved. The man is dead to her. She's dead to him. Like, it's just, there's nothing worth saving. Not saying that's what she's trying to do. There's just no point to talk. Like, it's just one of those things where like, I want closure. There's no closure needed from this situation. It's just so bad. There's no saving it. But her session ended. And then we had Chris. Pastor Cal was convinced that Chris was not going to show up because I think he had been waiting for I don't know how long, but he was late. When Pastor Cal was ready to wrap up the session, Chris came through the door already like, sorry, I'm late. I'm like, how many times is he late for things? But, you know, whatever. When he walked in, he was disgusting as hell with everything he had to say. He, meaning Chris, they were trying to talk about the situation with Paige, and he was not taking ownership for anything. He was blaming Paige. He said that she had everything wrong to do with the situation. He was talking about her appearance. He blamed the ex. Like, he was just negative on everything against him and took no ownership for anything. The pastor talked about the car. He's like, okay, and what? Like, I tried to include Paige on that. She didn't want to be. Why would she want to be included in a car for the mother of his child when she was okay? And then we talked about the appearance thing. I kind of took excerpts from the conversation. Chris said, I felt like we looked good on paper, but she's not the type of woman I would walk up to at a bar or church and like, let me go try to talk to her. I'm like, okay, you can stop there. Does this mean you're not attracted to her? Fine. And then he's like, I just wasn't attracted to her face. I'm not being disrespectful, but there's so many beautiful Black queens, white queens, Hispanic queens here in the city of Atlanta. And I feel like it shouldn't be hard to find somebody because I'm not that picky. That's like the shot chaser. Out of the millions of women here, y'all picked the one that was like, and I'm like, okay, shot chaser done. Like, we are, oh God. And then he continued a little bit more. I said, as if you haven't said enough, as if you're acting like you are Drake in my eyes. You are not even that. He's saying, you experts are responsible. Shouldn't be that difficult to find someone. Like, it would, he just was going on and on to the point. He just was like, I don't owe her an apology. I was like, okay, people are irritated seeing him. I know I'm not the only one. So why do we have to deal with that? Why do we have to sit through their failed marriage? Like, they divorced. Like, we have to see her also pack up the apartment because she's leaving. I'm like, okay, please be the last time we see them. I don't know how many more episodes are left. I know it's a few weeks in like their time, but like how many episodes, not really sure. Next, we see Vincent go and meet with Pastor Cal, and he said that him and Brianna had clicked from the start, but they struggle with the challenges with their communication skills. I'm like, yeah, most of their conversation, or most of their arguments they've had to do with communication from either standpoint, whether he popped off when he didn't need to, whether, yeah, him doing that, or her, I don't really remember her getting mad at him. He's like maybe being frustrated like with his tone and stuff, but again, that's also lack of conversation and understanding and like communicating. He also says like, I try to please her, but by pleasing her, I'm also compromising his energy and feelings. And I'm like, that's just stuff you have to talk about or talk through or go to therapy. I know they're a little bit maybe too early for therapy, but also therapy is needed for everybody. It works. So I don't want to say like it's not going to help them. When Brianna met with Dr. Pepper, her high points in the marriage was him being caring, him being joyous, and like his ability to uplift her spirits. And her questions were asking why does like finances and budgets mean so much to him. And like I get that because like she has worked hard to get where she's at financially and independently, and like I guess being told to compromise kind of like a lot when like you've worked a lot and you have your money for yourself. Like you being told to like watch your finances is kind of weird when like you're set on yourself. So now like having someone else being brought into it, it's a little bit different because like that's just what a marriage is. Like it's two different things. Now you have to put that kind of in one pot, if that makes sense. Brianna also mentioned her insecurities and fears about having a kid. Hers were a little bit Brianna also kind of expressed her insecurities and fears about having a kid. Her experiences or like I guess situations different than Virginia in the sense it was about health and internal issues. Again, I'm not going to invalidate or validate someone's experiences or preferences over another one's, but hers were just due more to high blood pressures, and also Black women tend to have more health issues in regards to having kids. I think we have a higher percentage of fatalities after having a kid or just like during labor. So there's just a lot of risk around that. She didn't mention the race thing, but that's also something because she mentioned high blood pressure. So she has a lot of valid points of why she should be scared or just like worried about it. When Brianna and Vincent debriefed, I was a little bit like, Brianna mentioned that she doesn't want to feel like she has to be frugal and cut corners because she's worked hard to get her salary and income. And he said that he's lived that fast and lavish life and he doesn't want to anymore. But I'm like, but now you have a wife and she kind of wants to. So I understand that like maybe you've grown up, and I'm not saying that you need to dial back to try and like match up with her, but like she wants to. So like does she have to compromise that because like you've experienced that but she hasn't yet? So that's kind of like what was, I won't use the word weird, but it was like, okay, we didn't solve that, so we're just gonna keep going. He also mentioned like the sleep aspects. He kind of complained about how she wants to wake him up in the morning. He's like, I work late hours, so I'm like tired and I want to like lay down. And it was like a weird kind of like, nothing was resolved with that either. What was weird to me the most out of their conversation, it could have been due to editing. Brianna was vulnerable and expressed that she's afraid to give birth due to her health issues. And he just didn't seem sympathetic. They could have edited out him maybe talking about it because he was just like, I just didn't expect myself, like talking his professional, like I just didn't expect to like not have kids, and like I can't imagine dying and not having kids like after me. And I'm like, okay, but did he talk about her health thing? Because she was saying like that's something pretty important and big to her, and like could be a big factor in whether she can even have kids and like what that means for her health. But I hope they talked about it. The way that they've kind of discussed things in the rest of the episodes, they seem pretty communicative, even though I'm almost saying that they weren't during the therapy session, but like I think that they probably did, and TV just cut it out. I'm just going to give them the benefit of the doubt. The last couple, Jacob and Haley. Jacob still has faith in the situation, says he's physically attracted to her when he was speaking to Pastor Cal, but he just said they haven't been able to progress because she has a wallop, and that's very true because she does. And he admits that there's a part of him that still wants to continue to be with her. She met up with Dr. Powell. Haley met up with Dr. Pepper and said that she set high expectations for herself, and she's cried more in the past 2 months than she's cried in her entire life. Because she has cried quite a bit being on here, just from being frustrated, from arguments, just from things like that. And she also feels as if it's been a sense of failure because like there haven't been really many positive or great moments with them. It feels like it's very strange trying to have a conversation with them. It's a little bit different than Ryan and Claire's. Go off to like they kiss and they're maybe a little bit intimate. They just don't do that. She doesn't want to hug him. He doesn't want to hug. It's like they're strained and forcing it. Whereas Ryan and Claire, I think they're like trying, but at a weird different paces in their lives. When Haley and Jacob had a conversation after, it seemed like they had asked and answered the necessary questions, but Haley again still just has the wall up, maybe just from past hurt and just insecurities. I'm not really sure. She's just like really adamant about wanting to get married and just wanting to being married, and like him as well too, because most of his friends are married and have kids and like he's not there yet. So like for them it's just very iffy and up in the air, the stakes of their marriage. But I don't know. So sorry it got dark, the sun is setting, but but let me know what you thought of the review and see you in the next video. Bye.